The Sheridan Museum would like to welcome all of you to our speaker, and we're very pleased to have Travis Dow and his parents here. But Travis is going to give us a nice introduction to Turkey. So make yourselves at home, and that's all I know. Oh, and you want my mic.
Yeah, I hope these are both working now. We're going to find out later, the hard way. All right, so I went to Turkey. I should probably point out, I'm not a professional travel writer, nor am I a historian, nor am I anything but an amateur this. I am the president of the museum, but of the volunteer organization. So I did want to make that clear because I didn't do an exhaustive history of Turkey, nor did I go to every town in Turkey or really have particular goals. I wasn't even going to, I wasn't planning on doing this presentation. I posted some pictures to Facebook, kind of for myself, for the memories. And because of that, I didn't caption them all. So when I'm walking through the archaeological museum, I didn't write down whether it's Sumerian or Akkadian or whatever it is, Persian, whatever. But apparently Velma, who couldn't be here today, went around everywhere showing people my Facebook pictures at where I go line dancing and here, and I have a couple of Facebook friends from church, so word got out that I was in Turkey, and when I got back, a couple of people, but I think it's all Velma's fault, said, hey, why don't I explain these pictures? So that's what this is. So just to kind of set expectations, I don't know everything about what I'm about to show. And okay, why? Yeah. So, well, it is probably important to note that, which I have another slide. Yeah, okay. I have a crazy friend. So what happened is I didn't go with a travel agency. I didn't go with a tour bus or anything. I have an old high school buddy, which is probably important to mention because it really does flavor this whole experience. I have a really crazy high school buddy that our whole lives we do crazy stuff together. Right after college, I moved to the Czech Republic, and I put on Facebook, hey, I got a job here, and it's really easy to find work here, and anybody can do it. And the only person crazy enough to say, oh yeah, hey, I booked a flight was my buddy James. So he came to the Czech Republic too. So we have crazy adventures in our 20s and even adventures before that, but I can't talk about them due to legality and statutes of limitations. But at some point, he moved to California, I moved back to Oregon. And so we didn't see each other for 10 years, but we started visiting each other. And he kept coming up with ideas like, hey, why don't we take dirt bikes through Indonesia or something? And I just kind of, stop. I don't want to. No, thank you. But he kept having these ideas. And to the point where I got annoyed and I just shut him up. But I helped him move to Missouri. He moved from California to Missouri, which is pretty smart. And then he called me up, and I could tell there was something different about his tone of voice, and he wasn't mentioning dirt bikes. It was scooters, but he said, have you ever played with AI? Have you ever played with ChatGPT? And I really hadn't at that time. It was like a year ago, 6 months ago. And he said, well, hear me out. So I put into ChatGPT, I've been to Cambodia, I've been to Jordan, where should I go next? And AI said, you should go to Turkey. I said, all right, well, and he never thought about that. But as soon as AI suggested it, he said, well, yeah, Turkey. There's a lot of history in Turkey. That's interesting. Good food like Jordan. So then he said, what time of year? So this is all AI planned. So AI said go off season in April. AI said what to eat, what restaurants to eat that at what hotels to stay in, what to see in the morning, afternoon, and dinner. My buddy's a bad photographer, so we got scavenger hunts on what to take pictures of with which composition and things in the foreground and all that stuff. And then just scavenger hunts like in this museum, look for the Sultan's chair and whatever. And initially he said the idea was scooters. We did not go on scooters, so AI would have gotten us killed a few times, for sure. The speed limit in Turkey is 90 miles an hour. which means you can safely go 105 before anybody even looks at you. So we would have died on scooters. We almost died in the snow as is. We weren't expecting snow in April. It's Turkey. Isn't it the Middle East? I have no idea. So we weren't dressed for it. And I'll get to that, but that's kind of, so AI led us astray. And I teach a workshop on how to self-publish books. I've self-published a few books. Some of them are even here in the museum. And so one of them, the project all along was to self-publish a book where we partially review the good and bad parts of AI, and then since AI told us where to go, and based on AI, we also missed a bunch of stuff, which is kind of interesting because I think a regular travel guide would include a lot of the Mediterranean, and we barely saw any of the Mediterranean. The Turks themselves vacation on the Black Sea, and we didn't go anywhere near the Black Sea. We also did not go to Ankara, the capital of Turkey, which there's a lot of museums and interesting stuff there. Edirne historically was called Adrianopolis, which that's Thrace. I'm a big history nerd. I would have loved to go to Adrianopolis. Didn't make it. We did take a trip on the Bosphorus. So the body of water between the Black Sea and the Sea of Marmara is the Bosphorus. That's where Istanbul is, on both sides. So this is the European side. This is the Asian side. This is Asia Minor, or Anatolia. This is the Sea of Marmara, and then this little strait is the Dardanelles, what the Greeks used to call the Hellespont. And I would have loved to. This little peninsula right here is called Gallipoli, which in World War I was one of the craziest battles. It's where the whole Commonwealth countries, the Australians and New Zealanders and all of them, like cut their teeth for the first time in a battle. And I mean, it was horrendous. It was horrible. It was a defeat for the Commonwealth. They thought it would be easy peasy, come into Thrace and conquer Constantinople. And they were just one of many, many people to find out you don't conquer Constantinople that easily, as you're about to find out. So what we did do was we went from Istanbul. This is all AI generated and planned, and then we just executed. We stuck to the plan pretty closely. Some of the hotels were booked out by the time we got around to it. So, but in a nutshell, what I'm going to talk about today is we went from Istanbul, former Constantinople, to Iznik, former Nicaea, which is really important for the history of Christianity, the church, etc. And then Eskişehir, which is just, it means Eski city. So Eski is where the Seljuk Turks first really came in and set up shop. And we're never going to look at this map again. So I'm going to tell you, this is where the Seljuk Turks set up shop with an eye on Constantinople, and they ended up conquering all of that, Thrace. They ended up conquering Yugoslavia, Bulgaria, Romania, and were besieging Vienna by the time they finally conquered Constantinople. So they were way up into Europe. Luther was afraid of them. Martin Luther, And then we went down to Konya. Konya is a pilgrimage site. It's where, I don't think it's where Sufism started, but there's a mystic branch of Islam called Sufism, and that's, if you've heard of whirling dervishes. If you haven't, you're about to, but that's where whirling dervishes started. So it's a beautiful off-branch of Islam, and in the Muslim world, they travel to Konya as a pilgrimage site to go see Rumi's tomb, and you're going to see pictures of that too. What was this? This is, it's Galatia. It's Cappadocia. So you're going to see pictures. It's underground cities. There's a thing on Netflix about it. Everybody's talking about it. And then we go to Şanlıurfa, which this is the old Crusader kingdom of Edessa. Odessa is a Ukrainian city up there, but Edessa was a Ukrainian Crusader kingdom. And this is Syria. So in the trip, we were 18 miles from Syria. A little nervous, but not really. They told us it's fine. This is Syria. That is Iraq. That is Iran. That is Armenia. Iran's over here. That's Armenia. So that's the part of the world we're in. We couldn't cross any borders. It wasn't safe. And you can actually notice that even though we were there for 3.5 weeks and really trucking, we didn't see the whole, like, so this is Kurdistan, but there's way more of it that goes into Iran and Iraq, and this is Armenia. So there's Armenians living all up in here, and we didn't go to any, and then there's Georgia up there. So we didn't go to see any of that stuff. We went from Şanlıurfa to Gaziantep, and then on Easter Day, this is a 12-hour drive. We went to Pamukkale, and Tarsus is right here. So I kind of waved at Paul's, this is St. Paul's hometown, and I would have loved to stop on Easter and stop in it. There's a big St. Paul's church where they think his house was, but it was a 12-hour drive and we just didn't make it. So I waved as we drove by. We made it to Pamukkale, finally Ephesus, and then we went back to Istanbul and got on a plane and came home. So that's this in a nutshell. I posted 1,000 pictures to Facebook. I don't know what Velma is asking, but I try. So this is 600 pictures, and I'm going to try to fly. So I would say save all questions for the end. Let me just get through 600 pictures really quick. And questions about me or what you're looking at, just try your best to save it towards the end and try to put your phones on silent and not have any distractions. I have a serious attention deficit deal, so work with me. But all right, here we go. Istanbul. Istanbul, so right out, this is actually our hotel courtyard. This is inside the hotel. This is right outside the front door. We see the Blue Mosque. So the Blue Mosque and the Hagia Sophia look very similar. They're often confused. I often confused them in the past. We'd kind of get woken up by the Muslim call to prayer, which is a beautiful, beautiful thing. But after you hear it 5 times a day, the first one's at like 4:30 or 5 in the morning. After about 2 weeks, it's not as beautiful anymore. But so we decided to go to the Hagia Sophia. We actually went there the first 3 days. So we were woken up by the morning prayer every day. So we set an alarm, but because of jet lag and everything, we were up at 4:30, like ready to go. We were super nervous. But the second call to prayer starts at exactly kind of twilight. And so if you go into a mosque to pray, it's dark. And when you come out, it's light, which we didn't know that until we went and did that. And I'm like, that's kind of neat. And the same with the last or second to last call to prayer. You go into the mosque and it's just dusk and you come out and it's dark. So it's it really marks the day. So the Hagia Sophia, sorry for the bad shot, but so the hotel was right by the Blue Mosque. The Hagia Sophia are in a square across from each other. The Hagia Sophia itself was built around 536, 530s, let's say, by Justinian II. The Byzantine Empire, in fact, the Roman Empire still kind of existed at this point. It was crumbling fast. Christianity had been the state religion for 200 years at this point, which is also here. That happened in Nicaea, so that's kind of coming up. So the Hagia Sophia has been around for 1,500 years. It was a church for 900 years. And then, so now, it's in more modern history, it's kind of weird because, so Ataturk, after World War II, the Young Turks came through. They abolished the Ottoman Empire and they started a new republic. Those are called the Young Turks. They wanted a democracy. They changed the Turkish writing from Arabic writing to Latin writing, which is why we can read it these days. I mean, if you read Turkish, Ataturk was a cool guy in the sense that he took a bunch of important mosques that were actually important churches and he made them museums. So for 500 years, you had to be a Muslim to go into a Hagia Sophia, which was built as a church, which, it caused political strife. But Ataturk made it a museum, and it was a museum for 100 years until 2020. Current President Erdogan turned it back into a mosque. So if you're not a Muslim, you can go up above and look down, and they have a museum part where they took out all the icons, all the Christian stuff, and you can go look at that in a separate building. But to get onto the floor, you have to be a Muslim. So anyway, so on day one, we went, there's so many beautiful examples of these. I just put one in this presentation, but this is like an ablution house. So before you go into prayer, you have to very ritualistically cleanse yourself. So it's a very specific, like you wash your feet while saying a prayer or while doing something specific, and then your legs and your armpits. And it's a very systematic way of cleansing yourself before you go pray to God. So every mosque has one of these outside, and you don't have to do it. So obviously they understand that people own showers and things, but you'll see people, in suits and ties kind of washing themselves, getting undressed and washing themselves, then going in, and there's, men and women are separate. So those ablution houses were beautiful examples of Ottoman and Seljuk architecture. So right on day one, this is the first morning, we're jet lagged like crazy. It's 5 a.m, and so this is our first day there. I can tell this is from day 3, but this is the view you get from the museum. So from the from the balcony looking down, it's kind of interesting to point out. So all of these, so Muslims are iconoclasts. They don't have any depictions of human figures. It's absolutely banned, illegal, halal, to have a depiction of Muhammad, let alone God, in any way. Like the Sistine Chapel would be a horrible thing for Muslims because it's just people everywhere. So they didn't, a lot of the mosques that you're about to see, they defaced, if they had like Jesus or the saints or Mary, they would just chisel away those mosaics. But in this case, they didn't recognize the importance, and so they just covered. So behind that is a saint, like one of the, I don't know, one of the 4 evangelists or one of the disciples, I don't know. But those were really big mosaics of saints, and they covered them up. That means Allah. I know that. I don't know the rest. That's looking down. So that's the whole floor. This is the direction facing Mecca and Jerusalem. The women's part is over here underneath. And then there's a library back there full of Muslim holy books. There's another great view. I forget what this was, if this is where the baptismal was. So they uncovered this in museum days. Underneath all of this is mosaics, and they restored this in the 1920s. And then in 2020, when they made this into a mosque again, they covered it back up. So there are beautiful mosaics under there. This is a weird example. So somebody wrote, that's a Christian symbol. You're going to see in the next picture. So this is defaced. And what I mean by they're iconoclastic is they don't even like fleur-de-lis. They don't even like flowers. I mean, if it's from the natural world, so that's why they lean into calligraphy and patterns, stars and those kind of things. So I was kind of shocked they're defacing, look at that again. Like there was a heart and a fleur-de-lis and a, it's like, what a weird thing to do, but okay. I mean, you'll see more crass examples. But so this is actually covering Jesus. There's the Virgin Mary there. There's white shrouds. And I think I have a couple more. Just the neat Byzantine embellishments, architecture. It was all painted, all mosaics, marble everywhere. If the marble chipped off somewhere, they would paint it in that marble pattern. I mean, they did their best. It's 1,500 years old. That is actually not a door. That is wood. That is stone carved to look like a door. I thought that was neat. And you could tell people kept touching it to try to see if it's real. It's not. This is on the scavenger hunt. There's a Viking that scratched in his name up here. Something like, I forget, Bulgar was here or whatever. But over the years, it's been a tourist site, even going back to 10th century Viking days. Oh yeah, that might be it. Mustafa, somebody named Mustafa, 1973. That's not that old. That's actually one of the shrouds. So there's Mary and Jesus, or maybe, peeking out from behind it. So you can kind of see up from the balcony. You can see them hiding there. And then this was just out of sight, kind of. This was upstairs in the balcony area. So that's what that would have looked like. Those are mosaics. Those are tiny little pieces of gold. And I learned a lot about mosaics because Byzantines were really into it. So they used everything they had. They would use glazed ceramics. They would use pieces of glass. They would use gold covered things, all kinds of lapis lazuli and all that stuff, whatever gemstones they had. They used everything they could to get those mosaics to pop like that. Your guess is as good as mine. So we did lie. We, on day one, 6 a.m., we went to the front door. I said, I am Muslim. We go pray. And so that's us on the floor. But I'm like, I respect that whole culture a lot. But it was a church for 900 years first, so it is what it is. Some rules were meant to be broken. So we got some good shots. We went to prayers 3 times the first 3 days. I mean, the third one we were like sitting there with the Muslims, like head to butt, kind of, bowing when they do. We were doing the whole 9. Yeah, there's me. Oh, hey, I have a podcast in Arabic called History of Germany that I never even think about unless I'm in that part of the world. I'm like, oh yeah, I have by the way. So I paid a Syrian refugee who lives in Cairo to translate one of my podcasts for Syrian refugees that live in Germany. So it's German history, but in Arabic. So I got my hat. I gave that hat away when I was in Turkey. So that's them actually praying. So they kind of do a prayer, and then an imam, a priest, I don't know. He actually gives a kind of a sermon. Like you could tell he was just talking regular speak, and then it was back to a prayer, almost like a hymn. Their prayers are sung. I mean, it's absolutely beautiful. I was amazed. I had a spiritual moment there. That's the Blue Mosque. And they're kind of built in the same way. So you could tell they took the idea of a Roman dome, but they put it up on stilts, and then they carved out each wall to create additional domes. And then even those domes have smaller, so it's domes on domes on domes. And it was the biggest interior structure until we built a basketball arena or whatever. I mean, it was for 1,000 years, that was the record for the biggest dome, until I think actually St. Peter's in the Vatican, and that was not an accident. So the Pope got jealous. And that was like 15 something, 14 something. When was St. Peter's built? So 1,000 years after this? I mean, no, that's the Renaissance. So Byzantines are different. This was actually coming back into Istanbul the last day, just to show there's another Blue Mosque. I mean, this is on the Asian side, and once they conquered the Hagia Sophia and built the Blue Mosque, this was kind of the model they used. You see, this is the style of mosque you see all over Turkey. And the number of minarets mean a thing. So if it only has 1 minaret, it's a local one. If it's 2 minarets, it's privately owned. 3 minarets is very, very rare. There's only 1 or 2 of them. 4 minarets, boy, I'm gonna lie, but it's like a cathedral. So there's something important about it. And then 6 minarets, which is like the Hagia Sophia has, there's something very important about it historically. And then 8 minarets is only the one in Mecca. So you can like glance at a mosque and be like, yep, that's pretty important. This is the Sultanahmet Hotel. This was our hotel we stayed at right away. So AI we stayed in some, kind of 3-star, just mom and pop places, which I really liked. They would give us Turkish coffee and Turkish treats, and then we stayed in like the Radisson and the Hilton and stuff. So it just kind of, like the Hilton was at the end. We knew this is the furthest east we're gonna go. AI said get a massage. We didn't argue. So the Archaeological Museum, this is Topkapi Palace. So Topkapi Palace is one of the Sultan's palaces, probably the most famous, turned into a museum. So I might get some of the things confused between Topkapi and the Archaeological Museum, but I think Topkapi Palace is where they had a bunch of relics. So they had Muhammad's sword and Ali's sword, his nephew's sword, Muhammad's bow. So that was kind of relics, and then things of the Sultan, and then Archaeological Museum. I mean, the Ottoman Empire ruled Egypt, what is today Iraq, Kuwait, Persia, Syria, Lebanon, Yugoslavia, Bulgaria, Romania, Persia, Iran. So, I mean, they had a monopoly on the silk trade route. That's why the Portuguese went that way. That's why Christopher Columbus went that way. So the Ottomans really, that archaeological museum, it has stuff from everywhere, is what I'm trying to say, including silks from China. And so, I mean, it was really amazing. let's get through some of these relics. So the Tulip Palace is super famous. The Dutch actually got their tulips from the Ottoman Empire. So it's actually the Ottomans that started the tulip craze. This is a very famous garden with the Topkapi Palace over there. And so there's a historical thing here too, which is this shouldn't even be there. In the Constantinople days, it was so full of people that by the time Mehmed II conquered it in 1450, whatever, 56, 53, this was already abandoned. There was like pasture land. People had sheep inside the city walls. So Mehmed could just pick whatever spot he wanted in the city, and this is right next to the Blue Mosque and the Hagia Sophia, and then this beautiful garden. So this is quite the fancy, real estate. It's right by the Golden Horn and the Bosphorus and all that. So, that's Topkapi Palace. There's some neat things about Ottoman palaces. So every time an Ottoman sultan dies, secret messengers get sent out to all the sons. And then as soon as the sons might be off in a battlefield somewhere, one of them's over in Iran, the other one's over in Bulgaria, as soon as they get that message, they race back to Istanbul or Ankara or whatever the capital was at the time. The first person to make it back to the palace basically becomes the sultan, and he has to kill all his brothers real quick. So there's one example, like I forget if it was Mehmed or Suleiman, but somebody walks into the room and says, "Hey, your dad just died," and he goes, "Okay," and he turns around and stabs his brother. So this is, Ottomans did that worse than ever. So in Topkapi Palace, there is a golden cage, they call it, and it is ornate. It really is like a beautiful golden cage. That's where the younger brother would stay, or the other brother would stay, because some sultans realized, if I die, there's nobody else. So until there's a son, they would keep their brother around in this golden cage. And so there's a story or two where the sultan dies, they open up the golden cage, and they're like, "Hey, Ahmed, it's your turn," and they don't find him because he thinks, he's gone completely insane. First of all, he thinks any day they're going to kill me now. And so they found him like hiding up in the rafters, and they drag him out of there, clean him up, put the crown on him, and put him on the throne. So that happened a lot too. Pretty wild fratricidal tales. So the golden cage is in there somewhere. There's a private mosque. I forget which is which. But they had, the Janissaries were their shock troops that were Christian. So they would kidnap Christians from Yugoslavia and Bulgaria, take them down. And they were all slaves, but these would be like millionaire slaves. If this was in today's world, they would be driving Bentleys and Rolls Royces and wearing gold silks, having, 15-course meals from the Sultan's private chef. But if you get on the Sultan's bad side, you're on the street tomorrow, probably killed. But so you live like a millionaire, but you are a slave, and you don't own anything. That was the Janissaries, and they would turn them into eunuchs if they worked in the harem, in the Sultan's mistress's quarters. So there was a lot of eunuchs running around, both in the Byzantine world and Ottomans, especially the Christians. Why Christians? So this is, I don't know if this is the Archaeological Museum or Topkapi Palace still, but so I know that's Greek. I'm sure that's a Greek goddess. It could be Athena. I have no idea. And I can tell this is Mesopotamian. And I think blood from sacrifices would come down like a blood fountain. That's a neat little thing. So this would be on the edge of an altar. And I couldn't tell you because Babylonians, Assyrians, Akkadians, Sumerians, they all shared a very similar culture. And so they all kind of look like, even later Persians have those square beards, Phoenicians, so forgive me. I'm just going to say Mesopotamian. That's a Herm. Herms are hilarious to me. So Hermes is the Greek messenger god, like Nike in Roman mythology. But and I don't know the whole story about how this evolved. I'm a big fan of Hermes, great guy. But a Herm would be a marker on a crossroads. So it's a road sign. It's like, 5th and 3rd. That's all that's, Main and Bridge Street. That's all this is. So there would be some inscription there. And it did have some religious connotation that I have no idea about. But it's a pillar with male genitalia and a head. It's, I'm not saying we should bring it back, but I do want y'all to know about Hermes. The Greeks, that's Greek. That's really Greek. There's a bull. I just like Mesopotamians, all those people really were into cow worship, Hathor, Egyptians, Hindus still do it. Like there's something about something that gives you milk, which we think is really cool. Unless you're Moses, then you get really upset about that. Those are Greek, definitely Greek. Oh, that's Marcus Aurelius. That's Roman. I'm a big fan of Stoicism. Marcus Aurelius, Epictetus, Zeno, Epicurus. That's an astrolabe. You guys, I got so excited. I have a podcast called History of Alchemy Podcast where I talk about defunct branches of science like astronomy, not defunct per se, but the predecessors to chemistry, stuff that kind of like the four humors and the four elements and whatever. But while we were just wallowing in our dark ages, being illiterate and not knowing what's going on, Muslims figured out that you could point this at the horizon, you could point this at Mercury, and you could figure out which way you're going, or figure out a calendar, or figure out all kinds of stuff, like when Easter is, kind of thing. So I go batty when I saw astrolabes, and I saw a bunch of them. I like to take a bunch of pictures of the tops of domes. So that's the top of a dome. That must be a clock. That looks like a clock. I didn't notice that, or I didn't know. I always thought our numbers were Arabic numerals. And then they're like, no, Arabic numerals are actually these things right here. And there was enough clocks that I can say, I do not know what Arabic numerals look like. That was really interesting to see a clock face. And they were all made in Paris, made in Vienna. So these are like Western European made stuff, Switzerland, whatever, but then sold to the richest person on the planet. This is known as Alexander the Great's sarcophagus. It is not, spoiler alert. The real one is lost in Alexandria somewhere. This was one of his generals, I'm gonna say. And so the reason they thought that is that there is a battle scene and there is, Alexander the Great might even be one of those people there, and it's definitely Greek from the right time, meaning like 4th century BC. But it's one of his generals, it's not Alexander. But so that's one of the most famous things in the Archaeological Museum and or Topkapi Palace. And then there's a personless feet up there. I don't know, there's a lot of that kind of stuff. So this is like Muhammad's sword, Ali's sword, a bunch of the early caliphs and relatives of Muhammad, which is pretty cool. I have not seen a lot of Muslim relics in my day, and now I have. This is Muhammad's footstep. They had his sandal. I mean, it goes crazy. I mean, they went like, there's shards of broken glass from the water that washed the corpse of Muhammad, for example, was a relic. They had dust gathered from Muhammad's tomb when they restored it in 1994. Just like dust and broken glass, and I mean anything to do with the Prophet, peace be upon him, they say, they had in that museum. Model of the Kaaba. So the Kaaba is that holy, according to legend, it's Abraham's house in Mecca, and that's, if you go on a Hajj, that's one of the 6 pillars of Islam, is going to Mecca on a pilgrimage once in your lifetime. And then you go counterclockwise 3 times or 7 times, or I don't actually know. And sorry. And so you go around the Kaaba 7 times in this huge mosque, the world's biggest, I want to say, one of them. And then that's it. You've done your religious duty. And every Muslim is supposed to go there once in their lifetime. So that's a model of it, 19th century. This, I think, Prophet Muhammad's standard. So this or another box was just a box for the black square, the black rock. The black rock is what? So it's the holiest thing in Islam. So if you go around the Kaaba, it's the stone you kiss. And honestly, I forget if it was Abraham's house's foundation stone, cornerstone. And that could be a lie. The sandal of the Prophet Muhammad. A beard hair from the Prophet Muhammad. So they really started, I didn't even take a picture of the stuff anymore. I'm like, yeah, we've seen hair, but that's hilarious. So 7th century, that's all going to be 7th century if it's from Muhammad. So then we took a Bosphorus tour. Yeah, we took a Bosphorus tour. It was cool. It's like a 3-hour tour. We got to see a couple of other little palaces and things around. That's the Blue Palace from the Bosphorus. So what you're looking at there, actually, kind of later on, I do want to mention the Golden Horn once or twice. So you got the Bosphorus going this way, and then Constantinople or Istanbul is on a peninsula, and going up here is the Golden Horn. Kind of like Manhattan has the Hudson and the East River. That's exact same thing. The Golden Horn, though, they used to have a huge chain that would cross the entire bay or inlet. And it was a massive chain. Like the links of the chain are something like this, and they were kind of floated on little pieces of wood, just right under the water's surface, and that completely stopped all the boats from entering. And Mehmed, so real quick, I mean, the fall of Constantinople is incredible, and I could fill a whole lecture on just that. It took years, it actually took generations, but when Mehmed finally did it, he kind of did it in a 10-year run, where first of all, right up the river, he built a fortress so he could start to, and the Byzantine emperor was like, oh, are you doing that to and he's like, no, I'm just doing it for, just to keep the peace. But no, it was to take over the city. So he built a huge Ottoman fortress over there. And then there was something like 1,100 Ottoman boats in the Bosphorus, just swarming, just full of ships and boats. And Venetians would actually dress up like Muslims and sneak through them to get them food and stuff. So there's a bunch of little tales like that. But Mehmed, one day, on a foggy day, he took his boats on rollers and brought them across the other peninsula to the other side of the Galata Tower, which is what holds that chain secure on the other side, and brought it down into the harbor on the other side of the chain. And when Emperor whoever woke up, he found that the Ottomans were on the other side of the chain. And it was only a hop and a skip. So the walls of Constantinople are famous. They're way taller than this room. And they're like double, triple walls. So you can't approach it from the Thracian side. Your best bet is probably by sea because the walls were much shorter. But even then, they weren't nothing. They were pretty impenetrable. So there's one weak point. If you can get past the chain, then there's one weak point where you can kind of crawl up. And that is what Mehmed ended up doing. And I think he bribed the rest of the people, and that's it. When Constantinople fell, that is, we might think that doesn't matter, but it's like 20 years later, the Portuguese started going around Cape of Good Hope in Africa. 40 years later, Christopher Columbus headed west. So that monopoly on the silk trade, really, Cosimo de' Medici in Florence founded the new Platonic school, first Platonic school in 1,000 years. And that's what we now call the Renaissance. So like those Greeks fleeing what is now Istanbul would spark the European Renaissance, which I talk about a lot in the History of Alchemy podcast. All right. Okay, so the basilica cisterns. This is pretty neat. I've known about this since I was a teenager and always wanted to come here, so I was just out of my mind ecstatic when I actually showed up. This is something that we forgot about. Ottomans, nobody knew about this until, I want to say, the 20th century, maybe even the 1970s. It was completely just forgotten about. And some construction work or a sinkhole, something collapsed. And they found out that this is why, when you besiege Constantinople, they never ran out of water. This is underneath the city. There's a tram and roads up above us. Underneath the city, they just built this, it's a cistern. It's just a place to store water. And we also know that Christians did this. I'll tell you why in a second. It's just great views. It's a big tourist attraction. This is one of those places where we schemed and we showed up 30 minutes early, 15 minutes early, and by the time they open, because we saw it the previous day, the line goes around the block. So this is, if you want to see the Basilica cisterns, show up right then and right before they open. They kept changing the lights. So, I say it's touristy because they knew what they had. They put lighting up there. There's, it was well done. And I say Christians built it because Christians don't care about Medusa statues. So Greeks would use Medusa in crypts and tombs and graveyards. She was a one of the goddesses of the underworld, like Hades and Hera and whatnot. So but Christians don't care. In fact, Christians don't not care. They dislike what Medusa. So they actually purposefully put her head upside down. And all the pillars are mismatched because they just grabbed a pillar from that palace and that temple and that, and just that's what this is. If you're into architecture, I mean, everything's there. You can study Doric and Ionic and Corinthian and everything's there. Here's a picture. I'm glad I grabbed this screenshot. This was like the last day. We're like, whoa, we're under the Bosphorus. And me and James took a screenshot at the same time. We're like, oh yeah, this is cool. So this is the Bosphorus. This is the Sea of Marmara. This is the Golden Horn. Galata Tower's over there. So this is Europe. That's Asia. And so the chain would go across this and being secured by a little fortress over there. So Mehmed II built a fortress right up above it to take over the city. That's Constantinople. This was kind of neat. Just little. I don't think we ever did take the tram, but we're not afraid of it. Both James and I have both lived in Europe, and I didn't own a car for 10 years. Took the tram everywhere. Took the train all over Europe. So it's once you're used to it, it's fine. No metro should scare you. But Istanbul does have 20 million people, so we were not scared. I mean, when we drove back into town, 20 million people. I don't even know what that means. I've been to LA and things like that, which is less than half the size. And I've been to Denver, and it's kind of like you see downtown Denver, you see all the skyscrapers over there, and then that's Denver. And then LA is the same. There is downtown LA with all those skyscrapers, but Istanbul was like, there's Denver downtown, and then there's LA, and there's New York, and it was just it's just constantly, like, it just never ended. This is nothing. I mean, the Asian side goes on forever and ever. 20 million, I mean, that's like Mexico City. There's not Tokyo. There's not that many, well, a lot of Chinese cities, yes. And then so me and James did two different ways of getting internet. I had two cell phones, so what I've done traditionally, the old way of doing things is to just get a prepaid SIM card, plug that in your phone, and that's what this is. I got Turkish Telecom, and it wasn't as easy as like Germany or something. I actually had to register, and Turkey's a bit more authoritarian. They really want to know what data you're using, where, how, and it was a little different, but they set me up. I had to sign a contract and everything, and it was a 3-month contract, so it wasn't quite prepaid the way I was used to it in Europe, but I did that. James just did, well, you can also get an eSIM, which I tried and failed, so I don't know. But James just called up his provider, which was T-Mobile, and said, I'm traveling, and they said, okay, and then they upped it to international data plan, and his phone just worked. So that's probably what I would do. Don't do what I did, do what James did, but anyways, this is the Hippodrome. So the Hippodrome. In Rome, I bet we've all seen Ben-Hur, the big Circus Maximus in Rome, where you could, they did chariot races. This is the same thing, but this isn't Rome. This is Constantinople. But the Hippodrome is pretty impressive. So the Colosseum is impressive because that was the record of spectators at the time, but that is nothing at all compared to the Hippodrome. So the Hippodrome is 1/3 of a mile long and wider than a football field. So you could actually have modern drag races on the Hippodrome. It is huge. It is several city blocks, and I don't even know if I put pictures from the top of it, but it's just tourists walk around. There's a high school at one end. Actually, at this end is a high school. And I was like, wait, so you're telling me that if I go down to the basement of the high school, I'm suddenly into 3rd century ramparts? Like, what the heck is down there? So, I mean, I wish I went to that high school, I suppose, but that's what they did. They built up, it was an uneven, all of Istanbul is crazy uneven. So they built it up, and that's what this is, to create that 1/3 mile flat racing surface, which I thought was pretty impressive. That's quite the construction. This snake, oh boy, I forgot the whole thing. So in the middle of the Hippodrome, they had some war booty. They took one of those obelisks from Egypt and put it up, kind of like we have like the Washington Monument. They just brought in an obelisk from Egypt, put it up. They had a bronze snake, which now, unfortunately, I forget the story of, but it goes back to Greek mythology. And there's a two snakes curling around each other, and you can still see the base of it in the hippodrome, but the head was lobbed off, I think, by Christians, and this is the head of it, so you have to go to the archaeological museum. I wish I would have put those pictures next to each other, but I didn't. There's another picture of the rampart, and this was like the last day in Istanbul. We went back to a place. We went the first couple of days. This was like one of our spots. So the last day, I'm like, oh yeah, I should probably get a picture of a proper kebab place. So this is just one of many, many places we ate. Dress code. This is us in the museum, Hagia Sophia Museum. And then, I know you can't read that, but this is just an example of what AI gave us. So, scavenger hunt for Topkapi Palace, Imperial Gate, the grand entrance to the palace, audience chamber, golden cradle, a richly decorated cradle in the treasury. Hold on, I'm probably going way too slow. Yeah, but okay, kitchens, etc. Library of Ahmed III, etc. Yep, I better start flying, but these are great pictures. They're available on Facebook. We're going to record this, and hopefully it'll make it onto YouTube, and you can hit pause. That's all I'm going to say now, because we're going to be here all day. So this is Kora Church, turned into Kora Mosque. The main thing I kind of want to point out, I guess, is, first of all, beautiful mosaics everywhere. Beautiful, beautiful. This actually shows that it was restored at one point. Some point in the 20th century, they said, okay, let's stop the erosion, and they did carefully restore that. That's what that fresh plaster means, which I think is swell. It's just so much cool stuff. There's Jesus. It's my homie. More. So, I mean, just every nook and cranny, just everything is full of mosaics. And I mean, that's really far away. Like, that's really far up there. So you can't even see those little tiny pixels, really, unless you zoom in with the camera. Just incredible detail. It's just the hours and hours of craftsmanship. Oh, that's the death of somebody. That second picture is, so this was the actual this is where the Christian altar would have been. And this is the direction of Jerusalem. And Mecca's right there. So this is called the Qibla. The Qibla is the direction of Mecca. And you would see, like, even on your nightstand at a hotel, it would just be a little green sticker that says Qibla. It's just a random, just like Mecca's that way. So when you do your morning prayers, you're facing the right way. So you see that in all of these converted churches. There's always going to, Hagia Sophia had the same thing. You know, Mecca, or Jerusalem's right there. Mecca's just titched to the east. Yeah, so there's examples of that marble. It's just beautiful. Makes its own cool patterns. And is that must have been the woman's prayer area, which I probably shouldn't have taken a picture of. But yeah, I could stare at this stuff all day. There's James pointing at stuff. Oh, so this is how we were deployed. Once James gets his act together, you can actually come back to the Kora Church with me, because that is a 360 camera. So we're going to upload those to YouTube and either put on VR virtual reality goggles and just look around. And it's a video. So as we walk, you walk. Or you can just watch the thing on YouTube with your phone. And when you move your phone around, you're moving around the Kora Church. So that's what that camera is. And we looked ridiculous running. We call it, full deploy. And we knew there's no hiding at that point. I'm way too blonde anyways, but I mean, we wore American pins just to make life easier. Don't hide, don't pretend to be Canadian. We just wore American pins, and I wore a German pin to signify that I speak German, because any way you can make your life easier overseas. Don't try to pretend like you're Canadian. That's silly. So we were just American. In fact, that's an American pin right there. I ended up giving my American pin to a kid, because constantly we'd be walking, we hear like kids look at us, and then behind us go like YouTube, whatever. And sometimes a kid would like turn his bicycle around and come at us and be like, YouTube? And we're like, yeah, smash that like, subscribe, hit the bell notification button, whatever. And then he's like, well, what's the YouTube video? What's the channel name? James doesn't have anything set up, so I always gave him my YouTube channel. So, hi. This is examples of, it's sad in a way, but it's just history. This is also history. This also happened. So it is what it is. We've done horrible things the other way, so yeah, it's another defaced one. That's a beautiful mosque. So icons. So when James first pitched this idea to me, I did get really excited about seeing Greek icons because I paint icons. For the last 4 years, I've been practicing portraits, oil paintings, and so the way I do that is I have an iconoclast at home. An iconoclast is Greek for a wall with a bunch of icons on it. So, I mean, in my case, I don't really paint. I mean, there's John the Baptist maybe, but I paint like Mr. Rogers as a Orthodox saint. I got Bob Ross as an Orthodox saint. Tolkien, Mark Twain, Bill Murray, like my hero, Buster Keaton, my heroes, Adam Savage. So I have 50 of them on my living room, and I am trying my best to do it in this style. So when James said, "Hey, you want to go to Constantinople?" I was like, "Well, hey, I got to look at some of the world's most prominent, eminent icons." And I've seen a bunch before. I have Romanian friends and whatnot. I've been to christenings and weddings, and I'm not a stranger to them. I mean, there's a reason I like them. But this one I picked out as an example because this is all embroidered. So what they often, and with beadwork and stuff, what they often have is this is actually a protective thing on top of it. The whole thing would be silver or gold. And then on special feast days, they would open them up and you could look at the painting and they would, carry them around. So when they would carry them around in a procession, they may or may not take the silver and gold off. So those are just to protect the painting. But they add a whole nother layer of just gorgeousness. I mean, these are some of the most intricate, ornate things that, they had at that time. And then often, because oil paints kind of blacken, so sometimes the hands I've seen many black Madonnas. There's like a very famous one in Poland because the hands and the faces blacken and the rest doesn't because it's behind that thing. So there's a whole myth of black Madonnas around the world and that kind of thing. That's the Veronica. The Veronica icon, the true icon. So there, the Shroud of Turin, that was the shroud of Jesus according to tradition when he was buried. But there was also a facial thing, which is this Mid-Eastern silk, like a really interesting cloth. And that also, the original is in Italy. I don't know if there's more than one floating around or what, but that's a famous relic called the Veronica, a depiction of a famous relic called the Veronica. Here's Mary and Jesus. By the way, in case you didn't know this, so the Byzantines, when they became Christian, this halo, that's Apollo's halo. Apollo was the sun god, and we just stole halos from Apollo. That's what happened, in case you didn't know. The sickle moon and star that the Muslims stole is just Dionysus. There was a temple to Dionysus that had a purple background and a yellow sickle, and Mehmed or one of those conquerors really liked it, and that was a Muslim thing ever since. But everybody steals from the Greeks. That's a Quran, beautiful calligraphy, all that illustrated stuff. Okay, there's more icons, but that's the arm of John the Baptist, allegedly. Those embroidered shawls and stuff, just gorgeous stuff. Reliquaries. I don't think these have relics in them, but a reliquary, whatever. Like this would have John the Baptist's fingernail or a nail of the true cross or nail of Noah's Ark or whatever, that they're containers for a relic. There's a reliquary. This is the order turning Hagia Sophia back into a mosque in 2020. So that's Erdogan's signed thing saying this should be a mosque again. And then we went to Nicaea. That's Nicaea. So Nicaea, well, we'll get there. So there's a tiny car. The main street is always called Ataturk. Again, so he was a big hero after World War I. The British and the French were trying to split up the Ottoman Empire, and Ataturk stepped up, created his own army, fought the Ottomans on one side, kicked out the French and the British on the other, and stopped his country from being carved up. He also kind of modernized it and, like I said, turned Arabic script into Latin. He did a bunch of stuff. So every main street is called Ataturk. It's Mustafa Kemal Ataturk, but every main street is called Ataturk Street. There's pictures behind him on every kebab restaurant, every hotel thing. He's there. George Washington, Lincoln, combined into Roosevelt combined into one. I don't think that translated correctly. I tried to use Google Translate, moral virtues, and then it falls apart. It is an administration. I don't think so. Okay, so this is a great example of a Seljuk mosque. The Seljuks, okay. So the Seljuks, the Turkic peoples originally came from northwest China, kind of near Mongolia, but Mongolian and Turkic are not necessarily related languages, but they're steppe peoples. They were fearsome archers on horseback. And at some point they started heading west. And by the time, they hit Samarkand around the year 900, which is in today's Uzbekistan. And that's where some Muslim army crashed against them, and they were so impressed by that they turned Muslim. That's when that happened. And then they came on down. And the Mongols did conquer the Seljuks, and the Seljuks were under a Mongolian Khanate, paying tribute. But at the same time, the Seljuks were pillaging and riding west, conquering the Byzantine Empire as they went. So the Crusades, especially maybe the second, third crusade, were to stop the Seljuks from coming in before the Ottomans were even really a thing. So this is a prime example of a Seljuk mosque. This one is from the 14th century, 1332, 1333. And I got to keep moving, but that's cool. It's a little bit of history. I just like the way that it's a tiny little trash can, but it really has that whole dumpster below thing. I've seen like similar things in Zurich and stuff, but it's always neat. And they tons of stray cats and dogs, and these are dispensers for you to feed stray cats and dogs, and they love them. They're all neutered and spayed, and they'll have dog like a little mark, and if it's green, they're friendly. Yellow means like watch out, and you probably won't see any red ones. Iznik, these are the old ramparts, the city walls, the city gate. James is pointing out that so above was just an arch that dripped down. This is what 1,800 years of drips looks like. And then even then, they were recycling. So these are older Greek columns put into these city fortifications. I love the cars. They're just so wild. It's like a Harry Potter bus or something. Just crazy. It's a one-seater. And that's a delivery truck, too. Oh, yeah, just ruins everywhere. So many ruins. Okay. This is neat. I think this is the first, not the first, but we came across a cemetery in Istanbul, but we learned later, we didn't know what we were looking at yet, but later on we learned that these are all in a very organized way. Like this will be your hometown, your profession, your name, or whatever. I'm lying right now, but it's always the same. It's like profession, hometown, name, and kind of rank. So the top is actually a hat. So if you wore a fez in life, depending on your status, you would have a fez tombstone. If you wore a turban, you would have a turban. So a flat turban meant you were a holy man. A tall turban meant you were more like a social servant, like a mayor or something. And this guy, James and I, we just saw aliens. Like, how is that not teeth? But it turns out that's a very fancy, like a pasha or something, like a nobleman. So we just saw teeth, though. That's funny. But later on, we found out, yeah, it's whatever hat you wore in life. So my tombstone is going to have a trucker hat, probably. I just got such a kick out of these tuk-tuks, and I mean, that looks modern. That looks cool. I wouldn't mind grabbing one of those. I like taking picture of how people kind of lived, and dogs in general, but there's an old tractor, farm equipment, kind of rotting in a field there. Greek stuff. Okay, I know where, yeah, this is actually important. So this is the church, well, when we get there. So this is the church where they actually did the ecumenical councils, like the Council of Nicaea, etc. But I won't talk about it till we get there. So this is a talisman thing. There's like little protecting Arabic, almost like magic spells. I don't know, but it's a talisman thing. Let's see what else we're looking at. Those are spoons for roasting coffee. Arabic script. Those are tombstones. Food. So much food. That's an Iznik tile. So the Iznik tiles are famous. They invented some sort of red that was really hard to do. They got blue and white figured out from the Ming Dynasty, and then they did that in Europe. But red was really hard. And when they first figured out red, so if it's an original Iznik red tile, those things are worth like $100,000 each. I mean, me and James were going in Topkapi Palace going like, oh, this is a $30 million room, just counting the tiles. So yeah, and they're from, so they'd have a whole street of people. They still have that industry of like little family businesses of glazing and kilns and just one after the other, just really cute little town cottage industries. So this is the church. This is the church where the Ecumenical Council of Nicaea happened. At least the first one. There was more than one, and I'm going to get them all mixed up, but there was some 200 bishops from all over the Christian world, and they were trying to figure out a bunch of stuff in the 4th century. So Constantine had just converted to Christianity, and his empire was a mess, though, as far as there was no canon to the Bible. There was Gnostics running around, and Manichaeans and Arians, and all those people that are today we don't really even consider Christians. And in fact, today, if you say they're a Nicene Christian, which Orthodox, Catholics, and almost all Protestants are. I would have to point out a couple that aren't, and I'm not sure I want to pick on Jehovah's Witnesses and Mormons. So, but what they agreed on is the definition of the Trinity, maybe not this one, but they eventually came up with the canon of the Bible, because there was another guy running around saying it should only be Acts and the letters of Paul, and the Old Testament God is the evil God. And so what we now call proto-Catholic Orthodox got together and decided what the Trinity means, like the Nicene Creed, that kind of thing. Which I'm sure you don't need to hear right now. So that's the inside of that church. Now it didn't all happen in this church. That's kind of a misnomer. They didn't, 200 bishops weren't here, but this was the kind of headquarters, and they would meet at the palace and they'd meet at other places. Like this didn't all happen in that thing. But this is the church. This is also called Hagia Sophia. This is the older Hagia Sophia. Hagia Sophia, it's spelled Hagia Sophia, but pronounced Hagia Sophia, and that just means holy wisdom in Greek. So they named churches that. Again, that's a Qibla that they built into so that's the direction of Mecca. You can see that here's the arch there, so that's the direction of Mecca. There's a tomb. They had people buried there. And then in this, I think the next picture, I'm just looking up. So there was a tiny little tower of a room. I think I actually had to take a panoramic picture to get that. So it's just really cramped. Probably just a kluft, where you bury people. A crypt. So you cannot tell anything. Okay, there's part of the mosaic, but there's really cool plastered frescoes and stuff there, but I didn't pick the best pictures. They're really faint anyways. But that's what it would have looked like when those bishops gathered under Constantine. That was what the church was. Just weird cars. Fargo. Oh yeah, so the red lights had a little Turkish sickle and star. So each red light was a Turkish flag. I thought that was cute. So this is the day we almost died. So this is going through, so we're leaving Ionia. Like Ionia are the Greek way back in Homer's day, like Troy, Miletus, like those are Ephesus, those are Ionian Greek city-states. We're leaving that region, and this issue here. Okay, so we didn't die yet. That's coming. Okay, Eskisha here. This is just a view of out of our hotel. All right. The Yellow Kid. Okay, they had a cute little comic book museum. Really what I want to get to. Yeah, so Eskisha here, was just a neighborhood. We kind of just got, I don't think tourists ever come here. The AI said there's a neat neighborhood. And it is not touristy in any way. There was no shops, no nothing. This is a prime example of Ottoman architecture, this like wooden beam thing where the top layer pokes out like that. I'm only going to show you that once, but we saw that everywhere. That is traditional Ottoman houses. And then this is such a neat neighborhood because it was really nice stuff next to completely run down, but not, people were living there. And part of me feels guilty for just taking pictures of people's front things, but oh my God, I was fascinated. Like that's a grapevine just going all the way up to the balcony and providing shade up there. I was jealous. Like I want that. Chickens, I love me some chickens. No, just a town mosque, just a little rural mosque. You can't see it in the best of lighting, but because the plaster fell off, you can see all the German, you can see the wooden Fachwerk. It's German, leave me alone. There's more of it. Yeah, just different. There's a playground. I was like, just different. So my best friend's in a wheelchair, and I sent these to him with a chuckle and a giggle because he would not survive that. That is not, the whole thing's on a hill. This actually looks better than it really was. The whole thing's on a hill. And yeah, my buddy was kind of chuckling. You might be able to make it with, it was also very narrow. It's not wheelchair accessible. And putting those things there were just kind of mean. So I sent them all to my buddy. Yeah, beautiful town. Oh my goodness. I'm trying not to swear, but the only thing we ever called this is Disneyland. I don't know what else. It's Sazova Park. I think I just found out it's Sazova Park. I should have just said that. Sorry. There's an American F something. And I want to say Swiss. I think the one in the front is Swiss. We were having fun. Like that's a trebuchet throwing a Pinko car. And then we're like, is that a Ladouche or a Trabantische, a Skodasche, a Trabiche? I don't know my communist cars well enough. That's Swiss, isn't it? That's Swiss, isn't it? That's definitely American. That's American. That guy's American. Yeah, just a neat park, but run down and weird, and also clearly a Disneyland ripoff. Like, we got a kick out of this place. AI said we would, and we did. I mean, it's like better than Enchanted Forest, but not. Yeah, I mean, and that is copyright infringement. That is illegal. That is just, they should get sued. There is no way that they got permission to do that. Same with that. Same with the, why use the Johnny Depp version of the Mad Hatter? Anyways, this was great. That was a good day. We were giggling and having fun. Yeah, we were pirates. It's really kind of a neat little spot. That's a ripoff from Ice Age. Can't believe they did that. Noah's Ark. I went to Turkey, saw Noah's Ark. There it is, right there. Smaller than I thought. I don't know how they fit all the dinosaurs in there. Oh, that's probably what happened. So that's a durum, a kebab burrito that is longer than his arm. That's all I want to say with that. That was pretty good. Oh, and we ate those. We finished every bite. We were so hungry by the time. This is the day we almost died. All right. They have all those like fake. That's a fake. That's not real. This is a billboard. This is 2D. This is two-dimensional. That's just a piece of paper. And they had those everywhere, and it worked. We slammed on the brakes every time we saw one. I was like, we fell for that every time. That one is not even on the ground. It's flying. It got us every time. Sometimes it was women. It was never the same. It would be a different cop car. Some of them said gendarme. So they got us. We were not expecting snow. So good thing we weren't on scooters. This is probably the time we would have completely panicked on scooters, but we were in a Seat Ibiza, which is not much better than a scooter. This is the last kosher picture I took. So yeah, I know we got there. It was actually after Saint Midas or King Midas. So I'll tell you about the Lydians first. This is a monument. So we were not planning on trudging through snow. This is incredible. But yeah, so this is a monument. There's Old Greek, and somewhere there's Proto-Phrygian on there. I can't tell you which is which. I think it's both. It's Old Greek or Ancient Greek and Proto or Archaic Greek. Actually, it's not. Well, yeah, it's Archaic Greek. Not quite as old as Homer, probably. So the Lydians popped up after the Bronze Age collapse, which is around 1200 BC, when the Hittites collapsed in that area. The Hittites, which are in the Bible, were in Anatolia, like eastern Turkey. And when they collapsed, then the Lydians came about, and the Lydians were around until the Persians took them over, Xerxes or Cyrus the Great. The Lydians conquered the Phrygians eventually. So King Midas, we know from like Greek mythology, he's the guy that would touch everything that turned to gold. That was a actual Phrygian king. And then the Lydians invented coins. So we actually got to see some coins. They're electrum coins, which is a natural occurring gold silver alloy. So the very first coins were electrum, coined by the Lydians. And that's, you've probably heard of King Croesus, or as rich as Croesus. The Romans still said that. And then also, so when Alexander the Great came back around 300 BC and conquered the Persians, then there's also the story of the Gordian knot. So Gordio, whatever, was the capital of Phrygia. And they had this gnarly knot, which was probably just a tangled up fishing net, is what I read. I don't know. And Alexander the Great came through and they said, it's kind of like the Sorcerer's Stone. The true king, or the sword and the stone. The true king is the king that can untie this knot. And Alexander the Great just said, sword, and chop. And he's like, I'm the king. That was that. I love that tale. Thinking outside the box. Break some rules. This is where we almost died. There's another fake cop. Boy, they're pretty good. They're not bad. Oh my goodness. So this picture, do I even have one? No. This is the picture. So at some point, so we saw that Midas thing. We're thinking we're good. And then we take a turn, and all of a sudden the road disappears. So the tracks disappear, and it's a gravel road to begin with. And James, about that time, goes, yep, it's rear-wheel drive, because he started to slide that we couldn't see the road. So I had Apple Maps open, he had Google Maps open, and we're kind of trying to follow the road based on a map. Like we're trying, like, hey, it's kind of, mine looks like left, I think it's left. And I mean, we're just blindly flying on this road. Super scary. And then I kept looking over, and on the dash, it said like minus 0.5, which is, centigrade. So it was, 31 degrees. And I'm like, at some point, I'm like, oh, minus 1.5. And he says, stop doing that. You're making me nervous. And I'm like, yeah, okay. He's like, it sounds like you're trying to comfort yourself. Stop doing that. I'm like, yeah, okay. And I go, okay, 1.6 miles. And he goes, oh, do that. And I'm like, okay, 1.5, 1.4. And then I didn't say out loud, negative 3.5. Like it just kept getting colder, and 2.0, 2.5, 3.0, 3.5. It just kept getting colder and colder. And eventually he's like, take a picture of this. And I couldn't. I was like looking at my map. I'm like, I couldn't take a picture. And so I go, okay, fine. And I take this picture. And it looks like you can see out the windshield, but you really couldn't. Like, so the snow was deep enough that it was hitting the bumper and flying over the windshield while it was snowing. So we couldn't see the road. I'm like, look out the window. He's like, the road's not there. So there was just no road, and we're just both following maps. I'm going 1.1, 1.0, 0.9. I go to church across this river here, the Methodist church, but I ran out of Methodist prayers a long time ago. I'm down to like Hail Marys. So yeah, we got back. I'm like, we got to this dry road. I'm like, I think I'm Catholic now. He's like, me too. That's a mosque. That is a mosque. That's a minaret. Qibla, there's the direction to. So we made it to Konya. We didn't die. This is the view out of our hotel. That is Rumi's tomb. This is Rumi's tomb right here. And I'm just going to get us there. Oh man. There, like, morning, golden hour, dusk, night. Like that was beautiful. I mean, we got woken up by the call to prayer every morning, which kind of over it by then, but it's beautiful. They had a map of North America in Arabic. I'm like, that's great. I'm like, what is Oregon in Arabic? It's that, whatever that is. I'm like, also the Columbia River does not do that. And I'm like, I'll take bets. Does that say Gulf of America or Gulf of Mexico? It's not funny. Don't laugh. So that's a madrasa. A madrasa is a Muslim religious school, and there's your ablutions fountain. So I mean, that's what that looks like. A different version of it. Each one of these has a little faucet, and you just sit on the stool and wash your feet and legs and armpits, and just kind of just right out there on the town square, and then you can go in to pray. So a madrasa, which is kind of signified by these. I don't know why. Just madrasas seem to have these, like each room had its own dome, and sometimes you could tell that each room has its own chimney. Like each room would have a little pellet stove or a wood stove or something. So we started to be able to recognize madrasas as in like religious schools. But that's a very famous one because that's Rumi's madrasa. There's a whirling dervish. That's what they look like. I'm about to get to them. That's an different ablution thing, I think, but that's what they look like. Glass, calligraphy, just beautiful stuff. This is a standard or a banner, I don't know. Oh, but that is a dervish's hat up there. So, these are dervishes' things. I'm in a dervish madrasa right now. I should point that out. So dervishes would travel, and they weren't unarmed. So even though they're holy people and they're mystics, they still carry around axes and horns to warn others, and they were kind of warrior monks in a sense. Those are dervishes. That's how they hang out, kick it, play music. Their hat signifies a tombstone. They're not being proud at all. They're letting the world know that they're ready for death. That looks like a sawfish kind of thing. That looks like an animal's, not a sawfish, but almost like a dinosaur or something, fossil, but that was cool. The talisman shirts, those are tons of little Arabic calligraphies all over, just to, protective spells. I love the calligraphy. It took so many pictures of calligraphy, so many more. So this is Rumi's tomb. It was an honor to be buried as close to his sarcophagus as possible. So these are just other holy men, rich men. I don't know how that works. I don't know who they are exactly, but could have been rulers, could have been sultans. Don't let me lie to you. But there you see, so there's the fez with a turban around it. That's what the Turks did. And this is a little higher status dude. But yeah, those are fancier guys up there, also bigger sarcophagi, and that's also closer to Rumi's tombs in that way, so that's closer you get, the more important you are. And this was a tourist site. I took one picture to let you all know. This was elbow to elbow. There were classrooms in here. People were talking to us. People were like, American? American? Like 8-year-olds. I'm like, yeah, dude, get out of here. I love kids. That's Rumi's tomb. That's Rumi himself. He created the great school of Mevlana. Mevlana is actually what whirling dervishes are called, and when they dance, it's called a sama. I just love that calligraphy. I mean, that's calligraphy. That says something in Arabic. This too. These are words. It's mirrored, but that says something. I could look at this all day. I love this stuff. That means God. It's Allah. But you read it, it's Allah. Yeah, beautiful illuminated stuff. There's just so much. That's the Quran. This is embroidered. Some of these almost look like wood carved, but that's embroidered. Just really thick 3D. There's a human figure. For an iconoclast, I'm always like, what? Nice ears. So that's a tiny Quran. That's under a magnifying lens. That's a tiny, not just a Quran, it's an illuminated Quran. That's pretty cool. 16th century. That's embroidered. That looked like carved. That must have taken a lifetime, or so many people. That's embroidered. Yeah, I took a close-up just to those are all stitches. It's a dome. I like that. It's a little rooster thing, tea kettle or something. Those are those patterns. So when you're an iconoclast, you got to do something like that. So that represents some sort of divine geometry, or it's the beauty of God. And it's really, so they do this with tile work too, and it always starts with like a square, second square, and then jut it out from there, and it's just kind of inferred patterns. And it's it's almost like a mathematical formula. I mean, it's just depending on whether you go right or left, you create different 5-pointed, 6-pointed. It's just really neat stuff. And they chisel that out of stone too. That's a sarcophagus, I suppose. There's another one with Arabic on it. Could actually be Turkish. Candle scissors. A stylus. Yeah, musical instruments I thought were neat. Carpets, that's a big rug culture, huge. Everybody's trying to sell us carpets. Everybody has a cousin with a carpet factory in New Jersey, turns out. The Hurrem Pasha tomb, 1528, just a really fancy tomb. That's one of my favorite meals. It was like super deep fried, delicious, just so good, lamb meat, whatever it was. I could only eat half of it, less than half of it, like a third of it. Returned the rest. Couldn't get it to go box. We're busy people. And the waitresses just turned around and started eating my food, like right there. I think they might do that here too, but they'll take it to the kitchen. No, they were just like, "Oh, you're done?" Just like three girls. I'm like, that's a cultural difference there. We would never. That's weird. That's Seljuk Turk stuff. So older Ottomans came to be in the 1400s. Before that, it was Seljuks that conquered most of Byzantium. Yeah, okay. Oil lamps are cool. Domes are cool. That's all tile work up there, by the way. That's tile, that's glazed, that's tile work. That's brick work, 2 different domes. Those are domes. Just really, I've never seen that kind of brick work. That's cool. That's herringbone, sure. That's a tomb. And again, there's the hat. That's the hat he would have worn in life. Kind of a weird looking thing. Those are Byzantine tiles. Those are old, those are Greek. Those are those patterns I'm talking about. And there's a Qibla. Okay. That is a rug store at the top of the hotel. They tried to sell us rugs in the hotel. The guy, anyways. We're way more than halfway through, and I'll keep cruising here. I should point out the museum does appreciate donations. We accept donations. There's a jar up there. Here we go. I really am excited to talk about whirling dervishes. I was excited. I've known about whirling dervishes forever. Didn't really know what they were. This is Rumi himself. This is calligraphy. So this is actually some either Quranic verse or part of his poetry. So Rumi was a poet. I think he came all the way from Persia, but he settled in Seljuk lands before the Ottomans came in Rumi. And he's called Rumi. That's not his name at all. Rumi is the guy from Rome. So when the Seljuks conquered Byzantium, they considered themselves Rome. When Mehmed II conquered Constantinople, he was not the Caliph, he was not the Sultan, he was the Caesar. That's what he titled himself. So Ottomans thought they were Romans. So Rumi, hence Rumi. That's calligraphy, which is really cool. So we'll get to the dervishes. So a whirling dervish ceremony is not entertainment. It is actually a religious ceremony. And so this is mysticism. What mysticism means is instead of kind of taking an authoritative, like law, canonical view of religion, mystics the idea is to commune directly with God, pretty much, more or less. There's Christian mystics, there's Jewish mystics, or like Kabbalah. Christian mystics are, I'm not going to name names, Pentecostals. But Muslims have that too, and it's not just Sunni or Shia. So it's not; these are Sunni Muslims, but there are also Shia Sufis. So this whole thing is a ritual. It's beautiful music. It's like flute music, and they have that sitar looking thing. So it's really pretty music. But this explains some of the parts of the ritual. So they do come in kind of singing a prayer. There's a certain part of the ritual where they kind of go around in a circle. So they first come in, they bow to each other. They then take off their robes, which everything means something. So the taking off your robe signifies your pure ego, like as in the soul, pure soul underneath your sins. So they shed their sins, like a little miniature baptism, and then they're all pure. Those are weighted tilts, let's call them, so that they do kind of, they're supposed to be weighted. It's supposed to have a weight to it, so it reminds you of the burden of your life and everything. The one foot stays on the ground, and it's supposed to be on the Quran. And I don't know if they have a piece of Quran in their shoe, or you don't step on the Quran, but that's your foot is supposed to be on the Quran, rooted in the Word of God, and then you turn with your other foot, and I might be turning the wrong way, whoops. Your right hand is facing upwards to receive the word and blessings of God, and your left hand is pointing out like a spout. I'm a teapot, short and stout. And then you turn in circles, you whirl, and they do that for long enough that, I don't know if I'd call it a trance, but they do kind of change their consciousness a little bit. And the one guy, this guy stays in black. He also has a turban around his fez, so you can tell he's in charge, but also he stays there because people do kind of faint and stuff. So he's also watching people to see if they start to swerve. So they do very specific things at a very specific time. It is very much, this is all explaining it as they did it. So everything means something. The way they're bowing, they bow to each other, all that stuff. This is the part of the world we were in. We just saw that, or just anti-Israel stuff every once in a while. I'm not going to dwell on it, but that was there. This is some guy making tombstones, so we got to see how that's made. And then, so this is kind of a neat shot because Istanbul itself, but all of these old cities, they just build over the rubble. So if you actually want to use the original entrance, you have to kind of excavate the sidewalk. And we saw this over and over and over again. Like Istanbul, we went into a restaurant, went upstairs, went into a balcony, and that opened out into a driveway. Like what? Like, wait, huh? It just, nothing quite, I don't know what the ground level is anywhere. Everything has basements and sub-basements, and then there's like the Basilica Cistern below there. So neat. Caravanserai. So caravanserais are fortresses on the Silk Route. So this one was built by Seljuks before they conquered Constantinople. So that there would be camel caravans coming through here. And I absolutely adore this. This is chiseled stone that they made look like lace. Just unbelievable. But it's a fortress, so a fortified castle, really. And then in the middle of it, well, they had art stuff there too. It was kind of neat. This is where tourist buses showed up. There was souvenir stops across the thing. Those are all Brits. So these are actually like camel stalls, but they were so high so that it wouldn't get too hot. So we just kind of took pictures of, it's just really neat. That is a mosque. So those are 4 vaulted arches and a cross, and then you can go up there, and this is one of the best examples of this kind of mosque, but it is a fortified mosque that you would see in places. Like the final retreat is you climb up there and pull the ladder in after you and pray that the bad guys go away. They had a loom there. They had an exhibit of, that's just a picture of a picture. But they had an exhibit of carpets, rugs, beautiful, some of them really old, like several hundred, 200-300 years old. There's one on a loom still. Kind of neat to see how they do that. Just so many carpets. I took a picture. There was little pigeons up in the nooks there. I took a picture of a bunch of them, but I thought that was cute. Caravanserai, kind of a neat, just a place to escape the heat on the way of your trade route. That's modern tile work, whatever, just art. This is Cappadocia. This was our hotel room. Just a neat. So Cappadocia, this is a town called Urgup. Cappadocia is the region, and this is way prehistoric. So nobody knows. If somebody pretends to tell you how old those caves are, they're lying. They have no clue. They can carbon date stuff to the Middle Ages. They can carbon date stuff to the Bronze Age. We have no idea. You cannot date caves in that manner. So there's bones in there. We know the history of some of those caves, like Derinkuyu, but not going all the way back. They could be 10,000 years old. Nobody has any idea whatsoever. The reason that you can actually see them like this, normally you should actually only be seeing doorways. What happened was the whole side of the cliff eroded and collapsed, and you're actually looking into people's living rooms. These could be 8th century, 15th century, there's no real way of knowing. And then the ground was really bad, so they brought in pigeons. So the pigeons would leave guano everywhere, and these are like pigeon cubbies to encourage pigeons to come into the region because they would farm the valley bottoms. So this is just from our hotel room looking out over this is out of our window. This is just what you see. This is what that place looks like. And then I'm going to fly through these pictures, but you're looking into people's living rooms. This is the hotel itself, like the reception's up there. Our hotel was down these stairs. By the way, very much not wheelchair accessible. This is a picture I took from my buddy Pete going like, forget about it. There's just not this one. Don't come here. Our hotel was like down, up stairs, down 3 stairs, down 3 more stairs. Not a wheelchair-friendly place at all. That's just crazy. I'm looking into medieval living rooms. Some of them were really fancy. Oh, we had to buy a coffee cup. There's my little grumpy coffee cup there. My Grand Ronde hat and a nice nook. Those nooks, that's just for my hotel room. Like, such a nice hotel room. There again, like modern houses, like somebody lived in here, and we'd see like PEX water lines and just extension cables crossing and they're just going into a hole. Like, I don't know if they're squatters. I don't know, just there's no way to do a census or deliver mail, or it's just absolutely crazy. But there are people living there. They used to have their own dialect called Cappadocian Greek, which they were all, so there was a bit of ethnic cleansing in the 1920s, and all the Christian Greeks were kicked out. 1.5 million Christian Greeks were kicked out of Turkey, and 500,000 Muslim Greeks were kicked out of Greece in the 1920s. So Cappadocian Greek died out at some point. You'd be able to hear it in Greece until the 70s in this refugee communities, but it's gone now. That was just that's just, I don't even know. It's so nice, and then there was just kind of like squatters places next to it. Really interesting. Nice views. That, like, so much mystery. Who knows? Who knows what's in that hole? James undeploying his camera and being back there. Beautiful view. You could just see straight through that one. But at some point, I mean, this is also an earthquake-prone region. The reason you can dig down into that stuff, it's tuffed. It's just volcanic, very soft rock. So you can just go. It looks beautiful. At night, they have everything lit up correctly, like just very nicely. Those are all spotlights shining up at the cliff. They did a good job of touristifying it. Really beautiful. And then it snowed. You just didn't see that coming. I just didn't see that coming. Beautiful. There's breakfast over there, and a cat that wants to eat our breakfast. There's cross-stitch Ataturk. He's everywhere in the reception. I almost took this picture out, and I'm like, oh yeah, no, this was just so I could remember. This is our 034 for Istanbul, and then COG 098 was our license plate. I'm like, oh yeah, there's our 3-in-1 Nescafe. There's my steak and onion flavored Doritos. Like, they had some weird stuff. Okay, this is Derinkuyu. You can go on Netflix, and there's a show called Ancient Apocalypse by Graham Hancock. He's the guy that talks about Atlantis a lot, and it is what it is, ancient aliens kind of stuff. But the reason he talks about Derinkuyu is, again, we don't know how old this is. This could easily be Stone Age. We know that there's a 13th century church at the bottom. We don't know. We think there's a 13th century cruciform cave, cross-shaped cave that they assume was a church, and it was also at the very, very bottom. So if the enemy did come, you could go down, and it's 14 levels. This is hundreds of feet underground. This is just a maze. And there were escape tunnels that would go 10 miles away. So you could pop up, escape. That's a bowl. I mean, I don't even know what I'm looking at. Like, it was sink-sized, just carved into rock. You could look at the people below. They put grates there, but there's just people down there. Really narrow. So they warn you against claustrophobia. They warn you if you have heart issues, you can't go down there. If you have asthma, you can't go down there. Like, it's actually kind of a I mean, James was kind of, he was like, he's claustrophobic. He's also a bigger dude. Like I'm really small, so it was fine. I'm afraid of heights, kind of. So I really didn't want to lose my phone in a foreign country. So there's a well, but I didn't even really want to. I didn't even take a good picture. So there's graffiti there, but this is a Flintstone type of, as in like the Flintstones, the cartoon, not the stone. But this is a big door, a round door, and this is the back way. So there's the stairwell, and then you dip in here. That's the back. That's where you would lever it closed, and then this is the front. So you would come in around here and shut it down, and then no one's getting through there unless they have a hammer and chisel. So there was quite a few of those, and that means you can only lock yourself down. You can't, once that door's closed, you're starving to death, except for the escape tunnel, I guess. There's me. So you did have to duck down. That picture is just to show that I really had to, you kind of squat down and use your knees a lot. Darren Kuyu, yeah, so if you watch Ancient Apocalypse, people talk about that a lot. Graham Hancock was on Joe Rogan talking about this place for hours and hours. Urgup is the town I stayed in. My sister loves horses. Every place, there's a tile mosaic. Every place I saw horses, take a picture for her. Old mechanic hubcaps and whatnot. Everything was just neat. Oh, this antique store, that guy. I don't know how legal some of this stuff was. So we bought we were always after like Aladdin's lamps and whatever, trinkets. The one thing in Muslim countries is you will never, never say never, but you won't get ripped off on silver or gold because they take silver and gold seriously because it's what they use for a dowry, for example. So you don't mess around with silver or gold. It usually involves a death penalty traditionally. So if you walk into a store in a Muslim country, silver's what it says it is and gold's what it says it is, and it'll be a super fair market price. So we were looking for, see what we find, and takes us upstairs, and he's like, this is the really cool stuff. These are what farmers find when they till the field. These are old Assyrian and Babylonian idols, and I couldn't even tell you which is which. They are made from bronze, so they are Bronze Age. Could be Hittite, it could be anything from that region. I don't take antiquities out of a country. Just don't do that. I was not interested at all in trying to, first of all the history's lost. So I wouldn't even buy that for this museum or something. It's garbage. If you take it out of the context, it's a clump of bronze. So that's 5,000 years old and it's garbage. So don't take antiquities out of the country. That made me mad. He also had arrowheads and a bunch of other stuff. I'm like, that's just, hand that to an archaeologist, be a better person. Anyways, I did find silver. I bought this thing. I had no idea what it says. My eyes aren't that good. So I went home to the hotel, took a picture of it, had to zoom in. I'm like, what? Hotel Schottenhammel. So I grew up in Munich, and this is a piece of Oktoberfest history. This is pre-World War II, because Hotel Schottenhammel was completely destroyed by the U.S. Air Force and Royal Air Force. We bombed the crap out of that hotel. Rightfully so, no regrets. They had it coming. But Schottenhammel is now a very famous beer tent at Oktoberfest, the oldest. And after World War II, they were the ones that brought out the keg, and the mayor came down, tapped the keg, and said, "What's up this?" And that's how the Oktoberfest starts for every single, since 1947 or whatever. So I found myself a little piece of Munich Oktoberfest history. It has nothing to do with nothing. I have weird friends here in Oregon that are into music, so they're just like, find me anything on vinyl, find me Turkish Boy Scout stuff, whatever, anything on vinyl. So I got something from East Germany, I think, and then something Turkish folk music. I'm like, yeah, it's just weird. I forgot to take a picture of breakfast until it was too late, but they fed us well. I mean, oh my goodness, they just kept, like French fries and donuts, like they just kept bringing food. Turkish food's amazing. I mean, I could talk about that for a minute, but there's just no time. This is Cappadocia, and it's just, so this is what happens. This is that volcanic tuft, and you just see how easily it's eroded. That's all I'm trying to show. They had things called fairy chimneys. Yeah, there you can kind of see them. might be hard to make out in the picture, but these are pillars, and they call them fairy chimneys. You can see that there's caves in them. So there were people living in there, and it's eroded since then. So, I mean, you don't need an archaeologist. You need a geologist to figure out how old some of this stuff is. This is the Göreme Open Air Museum. It was a monastery. So again, they carbon dated stuff to the 13th century. So we know that this was a nunnery and a monastery and a whole community, a village of spiritual people. But we don't know. They didn't leave a lot of historic records. And so even these churches are called like the Keyhole Church, the Black Church, the Dark Church. So this is Göreme Open Air. There it is, Göreme. It's a UNESCO heritage site. It is incredible, as you're about to see. So there's like the Keyhole Church or whatever. Maybe it's the next one. Yeah, you have to go up there for some of them. And that, again, this is something that collapsed. This should come way out. And that, this is something that collapsed, and now you need a ladder. That's not how that was. This is the 13th century stuff. Again, defaced. Not every single one, but they took a chisel to a, they were mad at faces. This is where the monks, this is a banquet table. The monks would sit around here. At first, they didn't believe they're like, that's way too small. But then I got in there and they're like, oh yeah, yep, that's what it is. It's perfect if you're my size. Yeah, that's, again, it just collapsed. It's a 2-story church. That's not defaced. Yay. So that's the older style. And then I think I took a picture where, yeah, that's still the older style. So there was like hundreds of years. Who knows? Yeah, there you could see. So these frescoes were chipping off, and you could see the old stuff underneath. It's just neat. It's a UNESCO site. I have more things to say about this, but it's just really cool. St. Basil Church, St. Barbara Chapel, St. Onopius, the Snake Church. That's definitely not what Christians called it. The Maltese Cross Church. That's just saying we don't know. It's one of those ice cream guys that you see on YouTube videos. They juggle the ice cream and boop you on the nose. That makes me so angry. I did finally eat Turkish ice cream. I almost didn't. I wasn't even interested. Like, somebody boops me, I'm going to Turkish jail. I love taking pictures of rusted out crappy stuff. Oh, and it's like a Renault. That's a 1-seater. I've never seen such a small that's a French car. So that's why they're called fairy chimneys. So that's just pure erosion. Some rock on top, and the rest just kind of melts away. Oh yeah, so these are just scavenger hunts from AI that I had on my phone. I'll take a screenshot so the next day I had it on my phone. This is the furthest east we went. After this, we're just heading home. Şanlıurfa. And so the city is called Urfa. Şanlı means great. Ataturk gave them the Şanlıurfa because they kicked out the British and the French in 1923. So they're Şanlıurfa ever since. This is also, by the way, Edessa. This is the Crusader kingdom of Edessa. An old buggy, mosaic, just pretty stuff. Göbekli Tepe. So I was interested in Crusaders and St. Paul. My buddy, we went to his whole reason for coming to Turkey was to go to Göbekli Tepe on his birthday, April 17th. So we were just super excited. This is it. We're here. We're 18 miles from the Syrian border. This is it. Tomorrow we head back home. So Göbekli Tepe is 12,800 years old. It's a hunter-gatherer, monolithic culture, which means that they weren't farmers, they were hunter-gatherers, but they did make things out of big rocks, is what monolithic means. So this is the archaeological site. They cover it up. Again, Ancient Apocalypse with Graham Hancock. He has a lot to say about this stuff because, so you can be a hunter-gatherer here. This is where bread and beer was invented. Let's put it that way. So here around the neighborhood, going all the way up to Mount Ararat is right there where what's his name, Noah's Ark landed. So this is that part of the world. And if you ever wonder where we get rye and barley and wheat and all that stuff from, it's here. This, if you walk around, there's wild barley and wild wheat and wild rye, which means as a hunter-gatherer, you can gather stuff and make bread and beer. You don't need to be a farmer yet. It was this part of the world, this is the Fertile Crescent, actually the Golden Triangle on top of the Fertile Crescent. This is where people settled down. So this is where bread and beer was invented. These were not farmers, though. So what they are is kind of changing archaeology and history, because we always thought the Sumerians came first, city-states, Jericho, people would make cities and then they would start farming. But this site, only discovered in 1994, turns that on its head. So this is a big, huge, honking site, 8,000 years older than Stonehenge, 8,000 years older than the pyramids. This is Ice Age stuff. This is crazy old. It was actually discovered in the 60s, but it was Turkish farmers, and they found a little statue, and they're like, ooh, and they kept digging, and they found a huge phallus on the statue. These are Muslims, so they just were like, ah, that's bad, and they covered it back up, and so it wasn't rediscovered until 1994. And since then, it's been rewriting a bunch of stuff. Don't let anybody tell you with too much confidence what any of this stuff is, because nobody really knows. So there's the only things the bones they know that there's they found skulls that were, you know, dealt with in some way ritualistically. Does that mean they worship their ancestors? Does that mean nobody really knows what that means? Were they cannibals? Nobody knows. The only kind of animal bones they found are the kind you would hunt, like gazelles, etc. Not, I mean, there's some boar, but those are wild boar. Those are dodo-looking things, but it's like game animals, not cows, not chickens. And then the quality really ranged. So that's a really nice 3D looking lizard. And then there's kind of weird stuff like that. These pillars are huge, but they have arms and hands. And the hands are life size, even though the pillars are huge. And they're making the exact same motion that the moai, the Easter Island statues, are making. So some ancient aliens type of folks make a big hoopla about that. Just don't. This is pillar 43 of enclosure D. And why do I know that? Because there's a bunch of, so here's a scorpion, and this is a dodo-looking thing, or maybe a vulture, actually more like a vulture. This scorpion, I mean, again, look at all this, pillar 43, okay? 1, 2, 3, 4, there's a whole bunch of pillars, but this is supposed to be Scorpio. And in Scorpio is where the asteroids come by every 10,000 years. And the Younger Dryas impact event, which created another ice age. And like, that's supposed to be a warning. Just stop. It's a scorpion. We have no idea what it means. In fact, people would come back around and say, oh, well, we have all these Indo-European myths about aurochs and these animals. I think this is a died out piece of mythology. There's nothing in modern history that ties us back to this place. It's a dead end. But I don't know anything. Yeah, don't believe me either. Don't believe me either. Yeah, just really neat stuff for being 12,800 years old. The sheep. Those are specially genetically modified sheep. They're Turkish sheep. They're just special. Mud brick houses, still a thing. That's a quarry. Those are just incredibly huge. I don't even know, 60 feet sheer cliffs cut because they're, you know, quarried out. Just neat, whatever. Okay, so Karahan Tepe is actually the furthest we went. It's supposedly the same as Göbekli Tepe, or maybe even older. Whatever, 12,800 years is old enough for me. I don't. There's some shepherd kids. Welcome to Karahan Tepe. They have an app, so you can actually, instead of listening to me, you can download the same app and go stop by stop for all the things they have. I just want to point that out. This is the same culture as Göbekli Tepe. So again, we don't know what they were up to, but the same sort of T-pillars, and they were probably covered. They found little nooks and grooves where there would have been wooden beams, so they had a roof. For a while, they thought it was like astronomical, like Stonehenge. Not necessarily. They also have different orientations, so it's hard to, like, is it supposed to be oriented at when Mercury rises, or, you know, don't believe everything. Anyways, this head is famous. You'll see that picture online somewhere, especially in the Ancient Aliens people because they just don't know what it means. It is super creepy. Being there in person, I got weird vibes. I don't know. I used to give ghost tours, and this place is creepier than some of the torture chambers I used to talk about. They also quarried all their stone from right next door. I don't know what I was trying to show. This just looks like they were using it to grind like grindstones. But you could see that you could just walk down their thing and see the quarry. It wasn't like Stonehenge where they got some things from Wales and Scotland. They're all just 50 yards up the thing, right there. That's where the quarry was. That's one of the phallic things where the farmers were like and reburied it. So I mean, they make little souvenir statues of that. I didn't buy one. Oh, the other thing I was trying to show here is there was one guy that, so when they excavated Göbekli Tepe, or maybe it was another site, this German archaeologist that was working on it, he then came here and he recognized that. He said, that is a T-pillar. And I don't know if I showed it. I was trying to show it. Nope. But you can see on the T-pillars that the top part looks like granite. It's eroded and the bottom part is brown. So that is, in fact, an unexcavated T-pillar, and a whole nother enclosure. And when you look around, you could see them all over the place. And they have confirmed with LiDAR and ground-penetrating radar that there are enclosures all around that. So Göbekli Tepe is shut down for 150 years. We're not going to know in our lifetimes anything else about it, but Karahan Tepe and some of the other ones are still active sites. Dur is stop. We just thought that was the best thing ever. Finally, 2 weeks in, we finally got a stop of a Dur sign. And I mean, we talk like that. After being there for 2 weeks, it's like, hey, take a left, Dur, and then it's an immediate right, and then you Dur. We just start talking like that. Urfa statue. Oldest known life-size statue to have survived intact into the present. I don't even know if I took it. Oh, that's it. Yep, that's it. Oldest known human life-size statue, or human-like. So yeah, these are all from Karen Tepe. And then the museum, they did a full replica. Oh, I am very happy. So they did a full life-size replica. So there you could actually walk around the enclosures. They're very proud of it. They did do a pretty good job of turning it into a thing you can visit. And they had, the tourist buses would show up and they would shuttle you up to the site. So this was all pretty wheelchair accessible. I mean, they did a pretty good job. But yeah, so there you could study it and look at it and walk around. James was pointing out, look, it's life-size. Even though that's so big, the hands are life-size. That must mean something. It probably does, and we'll never know. Selfie. They had a bunch of places like, take a selfie here. I don't like being told what to do. But so this is cool. This is Sumerian. And we didn't know what these were for a second. They look like golf golf things. And then we turn around and we're like, oh, so these are actually kilned spikes to turn into a mosaic wall like that. So that's cool. You can buy these things. They're called kiln spacers. And I kind of want to do that, like somewhere in my backyard or something. You can just, yeah. That's pretty cool. A death cult, yeah. Who knows? Nobody knows. So that's carved out of stone, which I thought was really cool. And then the explanation or the evolution of cuneiform. Cuneiform, I think Sumerians invented it, but it was used by Minoans and Greeks. Linear B is Greek, so we know what the Mycenaeans used cuneiform. That could be Babylonian, Akkadian, Assyrian. Yeah. Mm-hmm. That too. Oh, there's cuneiform. I bet I got a lot of pictures of. I just love that stuff. So we've gone full circle with writing on tablets with styluses, but that's how they used to do it. And this is a poem, kind of like Psalms, like a poem to a god. And I just put one picture in. We stood there and read those for probably an hour, just reading those things. It was so cool. It's kind of pretty. It's kind of poetry. It reminds me of Psalms. It's a lot like the book of Psalms, but to a different god. That's an actual altar. So that's just so cool. I happen to know that way back in Mesopotamia, before Israelites were really a thing, altars would look like that, and they would have horns on the side even. And even if they weren't chiseled to look like a bull, they would have horns on the side. And we get our word sanctuary from that. Like somebody would come in and actually grab the horns, and the people that are trying to get you, the U.S. Marshals, would try to take you away, and the priests would try to help you. And it was a physical, actual, maybe you get saved, maybe we kill you. Right? So an altar actually had that purpose in the ancient Mesopotamian world. Camel. So glass is cool because glass doesn't preserve. The fact that I'm looking at this much Bronze Age glass or however old it is, that's cool. Who knows? I forget. I don't know. Probably Greek. Okay. Okay. This is Abraham's cave. So Shanliurfa. This is Abraham bought his cave from the Hittites. Hittites were a Bronze Age culture that collapsed 1200 BC. Hittites are an Indo-European language, which a German found out. A German found that out. So Hittite, who's reading cuneiform, and suddenly he comes across a sentence. He knows what Ishtar is, the god's name, and suddenly it's this German going, "Esset Brot und trinket Wasser." Like it's not just a European language, Indo-European language. It's almost Germanic. So it's a Bronze Age, like almost like it's pretty neat. I love history, you guys. So this is the Mosaic Museum, and that was kind of astounding and just so this is okay. Just remember this guy. Remember that horse. That's the whole thing. So this is that guy. So I mean, it's this huge floor, and we got to get out of here. There's my history of Germany hat. That's the guy that ended up with it. This is in Kurdistan. I gave it to a Kurd. Happy birthday, James. There's me. Gaziantep. So Gaziantep is famous for a copper bazaar, a spice bazaar. We ran out of time. I just don't. You can see people. I had a run-in with the police. I bought some soccer jerseys. I got my haircut in Gaziantep. He called it an Antep Halle, which when I got back to the hotel room, I realized meant Gaziantep rug. And I'm like, sold me a rug after all. And then I know we're out of time, but this is too good. So I'm walking down the street. My buddy had COVID, so he was just gone for 4 days. I was by myself for 4 days. Abandoned him at the hotel room. So I'm wearing what you saw me wear: my soccer jersey and track pants and sunglasses. And I listened to music, and because James wasn't there, I was probably listening to country music that I haven't heard in 2 weeks, and I hadn't been line dancing in 2 weeks. I don't know what I was doing. I'm just guessing. I'm like, I must have been doing a little jig or just, kind of bopping too much, Kevin Bacon and Footloose or something. I don't know. But all I know is that there was a van, a police van right there. And I don't know if they were trying to yell at me, get me to stop, because I was just in my own world. I had headphones on. But when they got this far, I saw them and I stopped, and they were on a path next to me, like 30 yards away. And the guy just goes like this, like stop. And when I stop, the whole van stops. And I'm like, oh, here we go, And I pull out my headphones. I'm like, sorry? And he goes, oh. And so that was the fastest police, like, my bad, didn't realize you were an American, as you were, thought you were a drug dealer. Just, damn it. That actually happens to me all the time. I don't know why. In fact, today I look like a different kind of drug dealer, I know. Pamukkale, okay. The cool thing about Pamukkale, it's a natural wonder. It's a bicalcium carbonate, which is just a fancy way of saying chalk. So it's a natural hot springs, and it bubbles up those minerals. On the top of the hill is an old Greek ruins called Heliopolis, like the Sun City. So there's an old, whatever it's called, arena. But then, so if you've ever seen pictures of Pamukkale, I'm just going to fly through these. These should be full of turquoise, beautiful water. If you've seen a picture like that, it's at least 20 years old. What you get today, these are concrete. They tried to recreate that, but it got too touristy. So the water no longer rises to the top of the hill. Pamukkale is at the bottom of the hill, the groundwater left, and that's it. So what used to be beautiful in the 90s is now just a trickle of chalk. So I tried to pick the best shots, but you can see that's an artificial thing. Natural wonder that that just used to be so pretty. It's still nice. And then Hierapolis, they did some nice things with those reused columns again. Okay, that's the only beer I had in Turkey. They just don't drink over there. So I had one single beer the whole 3.5 weeks. No nicotine, nothing else. There's a lot of hot air balloons. I did carry dog treats, and I gave dogs dog treats. Tuk. All right, we got it. That was touristy. Isnik tiles. Okay, wait, we're almost done. Last one's a presentation. Okay. The thing that by far exceeded my expectations was Ephesus. I kind of knew what I was getting into for most of it. Pamukkale was a huge disappointment, but Ephesus, I had no idea. So what was not on the itinerary, this just happened to be right next to our hotel. This is a massive ruins, massive church to St. Paul the Evangelist, and I had no idea that was there. His tomb is in that church. That was not part of the itinerary or plan or anything. So there's part of it. Must have been massive. There's some more dogs that we fed. This one actually, whoops. Yeah, so we stayed in St. Mary's house. That's what it's called. There was a shrine to St. Mary's in Ephesus. Those goats got free. They pulled their anchor out of the ground and they were free roaming, happy goats. This is the Temple of Artemis. It was one of the traditional 7 wonders of the world. And it's not much left. So it was just a field, and somewhere in the 18th century, they rediscovered it, confirmed that it was a temple to Artemis. So this, in the ancient world, this was the biggest temple. Ephesians were very, very proud of Artemis until the Christians came along. So that is not what the pillar should look like. That is mismatched, and there's a stork nest on the top, but it's one of the traditional wonders of the world. So hey, we went and saw it. Wasn't nearly as impressive as everything else. There's a citadel from above. Yeah, there's James, just to give you how big those columns really were. It was a huge temple, way bigger than the Acropolis in Greece, in Athens. Stuff, those goats, stuff. Okay, that's the church. Okay, so this is St. John's Church. I think we've seen enough ruins, but it was sprawling and impressive. And then they used the rubble of the church to build the citadel. So if you want to see the rocks, you got to go see the citadel. And then there it is, the tomb of St. John in Mizari. That's what it looked like. They catered to tourism there. It's a dog I fed. Okay. Ephesus ruins. So that's St. Mary. That's going up to St. Mary's house. That was a keyhole baptismal. Yeah, there it is there. This was the only Christian thing we saw in Turkey. Everything else was converted to a mosque. This is the exception. This was a fully functioning little Catholic shrine. No pictures inside, and I was respectful. That's James lighting a candle. There's an atheist for you who feels like we finally made it. And then people put prayers in the things. Yeah, I think James was thanking us for the snow day. Genuine fake watches. Okay, so this is Ephesus. This is it. We're done. But this was so huge. I mean, you could see multiple neighborhoods. It keeps going on that way. It goes on behind me. It goes on around the corner. The Agora is around the corner. So that's a massive, that looks like a sewer system, like the Cloaca Maxima in Rome. I don't know what that actually is, but it's crazy masonry. Yeah, they tried to stack stuff back up together. That's not how it should be, but the Greek dog. This was the richer part of town. This was actually covered. So everything had mosaics and frescoes, everything. This was upper crust, divine geometry, sacred geometry. Yeah, just more of it. That's the Agora, or Agora of the Agora. Agora means like marketplace. That's in German, mit Zustimmung der Generaldirektorin für blah, 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 blah. Because Austrians restored that, by the way. I sold it. I'm like, oh, I know what that says. Oh, so yeah, we have the Red Cross, but I was in this part of the world where they have the Red Crescent. So in an emergency, you dial 112. Don't forget that. And then this place, I have more stories about food. I'm not going to get to them. But I was like, I got to take one picture of a spit of this guy had chicken and lamb. And that's what I mean by kebab is, it's always on a vertical spit like that. And it's just my absolute favorite food in the whole wide world. If you get it in Germany, because they do it better. For reasons that I'll explain not here. That's a Citroën. I'm like, I didn't even know. I didn't know they make cars like that. Oh, this is it. This is the last picture, really. So on the last day, James lost his hat. And there was no retrieving it. That's a glass platform. It was in the Ephesian ruins. So that's it. This is us. I think, oh, we had different seats, but then we were back at the Frankfurt airport. This is the Frankfurt airport. And then he makes his way towards Kansas City, and I make my way to Portland. So that was our last selfie. And he lost his hat. I gave him that hat. Those are like the Blue Angels, like their fighter jet things. And I bought that at the Disneyland thing. And then, so that's it. We're done. Thank you so much. We made it. 3:55.
Okay, you ladies in the back row, quit talking.
Attention, please. Thank you.